The Nikon D300s is a DSLR that was released nearly 10 years ago. It was announced in July 2009, and to this day, you can get these around under $300 on eBay. So I went ahead and bought one because I've always wanted one of these cameras to really see what was so special about this camera. It took nearly 7 years for them to refresh this with the D500, and lots of people were waiting for the replacement. So let's take a look at how this camera performs in 2019. So the camera I ordered cost around $225 shipped, and with that I got the DSLR and this lens along with the charger and battery. It also came with a 1-year Mac warranty, MACK, not to confuse with Apple. And I haven't had to use it yet, so I don't know how reliable it is, but for $225 shipped, that's not a bad price. I'll have the link to everything I ordered in the description. This camera has all the rubber grips already installed, brand new. I actually bought all these rubber grips because when I first got this camera, it was in pretty bad shape. Aesthetically, not like, it wasn't working or anything. It was working fine. So everything that I bought will be in the description. And after everything, I still came out around, I want to say $286 shipped. The prices will be all in the description. Now this camera is a 12 megapixel camera, 12.3 exactly, and it's a DX format, so 1.5 times crop sensor. And it actually does have a video mode as well. In terms of video quality, you get 720p at around 24 fps and a mono microphone. This part of the video is actually recorded on the D300s using the lens that the camera came with. As for the lens is a Tamron 17-50 2.8 focal length, and it did not have these rubber grips. I actually had to order these. I got them for around $7 on eBay. So it looks new now, and I want to start off with showing you guys some pictures that I took with this camera. In terms of how the camera looks like, we have the standard Nikon layout. However, this camera has Nikon's Pro Body configuration. So it has the buttons up here with the little scroll wheel. It has the shutter with a few more buttons up here. And on the back, you have the autofocus on, the exposure lock, a few more buttons here, the 3-inch LCD display, and live view and info button. And this is one of my favorite features of this camera, is you can change the autofocus mode, like the points. Now on the sides here, we have a compact flash slot and a SD slot. I've tested both ports to 64 gigabytes, perfectly fine, so you can put a lot of storage on here. As for the other side of the camera, we have mini HDMI, a AV out, microphone in, DC in, and USB. And on top we have a very big display here, and this display lights up. We can light it up if you'd like. And this is actually one of the biggest displays I've seen on a Nikon camera. It's actually bigger than my D800s display too, and I really like the amount of information you can see. So one of the nice things about this camera is it has a pretty good autofocus for its age. It actually gets focused pretty quickly. And even if I mess with this dial and put it all the way to infinity and focus on something, it's not that slow actually, considering that this is a lens that requires an autofocus drive in the camera, which this has. And this camera will work with most Nikon lenses, even all the way up to around the 1980s. Now one of the things that makes this camera really useful is how fast it can shoot. So this camera can shoot at 7 FPS, and with the grip you can do 8 FPS, and that's pretty quick. To show you guys how fast that is, let's actually try that out. That's pretty quick. And with the grip, you'll get 8 FPS. In terms of battery life, the camera is rated for 950 shots per battery charge. However, because this camera is older, mine doesn't last that long. The battery that came with this camera, I got around 100 shots. However, I got a new battery from eBay and it cost about $15. And with that battery, I get around 400 shots. Now you have to keep in mind that I do use live view every now and then, and the battery is quite old. Even though it's a new battery, it's probably been sitting on the shelf for quite a while. One thing I want to do is compare this camera to some flagship phones that are available right now, such as the iPhone XS Max and the Galaxy Note 9. So let's take a look at how the pictures come out. Looking at the D300s picture, you can really see the depth of field because the flowers are in focus and look clear, while the leaves in the background are just not really visible, they're blurred out, and this makes a nice feel to the image. And when we switch to the iPhone, you can basically see everything, and the leaves on the bottom right just don't look as clear as they do on the Note picture, but both of these pictures lack that depth of field that the D300s is giving the picture. And when looking at an overall picture here, the D300s just seems to have a little bit more definition, and the Note 9 is having some weird issues with colors. The colors just look kind of weird on the Note 9, so I'm not sure what's going on there. And then switching over to the depth of field, the D800 is my overall benchmark of depth of field, and this picture really shows how nice depth of field looks on a full frame camera. And switching over to the D300s, because of it's a crop sensor, the same lens gives a much more zoomed in picture. And the depth of field is still not that bad actually, it looks okay. And when we switch over to the iPhone, you can kind of see it looks kind of weird, if you will. Like, it seems kind of artificial, and it is artificial, but it's not doing like too bad of a job because this is like a software thing. And the Note 9 looks kind of weird too. But for something that's using software, this isn't that bad, but you can see that a real DSLR looks better. For low lights, I'm also comparing the D800 in here so you guys can see what a full frame camera looks like. As you can see, there's not that much noise and the picture looks pretty good. This is actually taken at I think it was 1/4 second exposure, and it looks really bright. The ISO is 1600 here. And the D300s doesn't look that bad either. Now, you have to keep in mind that the D300s shoots in RAW, so we can use some nice post-processing to fix up the image. Keep in mind this room was dark, really dark, and the iPhone picture really shows that because it's lost a lot of the definition in the picture. The labels don't look that clear. And what's interesting is the Note 9 actually did pretty good in low lights. And what's really interesting is the Note 9 running the Google cameras with night sight. This picture actually really surprised me because it actually looks pretty good and it makes a really good difference compared to regular mode. So that was really interesting. In terms of build quality, this is one of the nicest cameras I've owned. So this thing is built like a tank, and I kind of feel like it's actually built more stronger than my D800. And I'll tell you, they do not make these like they used to. Now, you can buy a D3500 for $400 plus tax with the camera and lens, a brand new camera. However, you're not going to have the pro controls like this camera. You're not going to have the dual SD and compact flash slots. And you're not going to have the pro build, which is something I really like about this camera. It really just feels great in the hands. And that's basically my next point. The D3500 will cost you around probably $150 more than a camera like this if you fully like fix it up like I did. This did cost me around $286 for everything. That includes brand new battery, all the grips, strap, which you don't see here right now. When I was making this decision, it was hard for me whether I wanted to get the D3500 or get this, and I'm glad I went with this because the D3500 is great, but it also costs more. If we compare this to the price of a D3500, you're looking at almost $200 more for that camera. And you lose those things that I told you about, but at the same time, the D3500 is a 24 megapixel camera and it's a much newer camera. If you're gonna do video work, I highly recommend getting the D3500. It'll just annihilate this camera in video work. However, if you're in a controlled environment and you don't mind 720p, 24 fps, just plug this into a stereo microphone, put it on a tripod, and just focus and you're good to go. You can actually make decent videos with this camera. The issue is there's just no control, or it's 720p, 24 fps. So in conclusion, yes, this camera produces some nice pictures and it's a great way to get into the DSLR world. I think for under $300, this is a great price, especially since it's only around $250, maybe even $240 for some cameras to get this. If you use the link in the description, you'll be able to buy the same exact one that I did, which also comes with the warranty. If you don't care about dual card slots or the video capability, you can get the D300 instead, which is basically the same sensor and most of the same features. This is just an updated version. That camera can be had for $200, and I've seen some for around $175 to $180, and one was even $150. So do check out eBay. But in my opinion, I'd rather go with this bundle that I got because you get a pretty decent lens. This lens is not bad actually, and it'll really provide you a decent focal range, and it's not bad in low light. And you get dual card slots, which is really useful. The thing I like about dual card slots is I can use my SD card for JPEG files and the compact flash for RAW files. So when I go into Photoshop or Lightroom, they're already separated. So with that said, if you want a new DSLR, the D3500 is a great choice. But if you want to get into photography for on the cheap and you want a camera that can still hold its own in today's world with pro controls, I highly recommend the D300s. So as always, like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.